Hello, friends. Welcome back to Movies and Melodies. It's the second episode in December. Another duo. They don't share a birthday, they shared a very, very close friendship and a very close working partnership. Srishti Nath urf Ranbir Raj Kapoor and Shankar Das Kesri Lal urf Shailendra. Shailendra ji was born on the 30th of August 1923 in Rawalpindi, so still British India. His family, they were actually from Bihar, but they had moved to Rawalpindi for work. His father was a very big contractor in Rawalpindi at a big hospital. When he was born, times were still good, the family was doing well. Shortly after his birth, series of unfortunate circumstances, they were reduced to a life of penury. They decided to move to Mathura. His childhood and some part of his adulthood was spent in grinding poverty. They would not have enough food for more than one meal a day, sometimes not even that. Life was extremely hard for this young man. Despite that, his love for learning was such that he went to a government school. When he graduated from his intermediate, he earned the third rank in the entire state of UP. So this was a very intelligent young man, very creative also. Their financial circumstances being what they were, he was not able to study further. His brother was in the railways, so he also decided to apply for a job in the railways. He got a job as an intern in the mechanical engineering department in Matunga of the Indian Railways. He moved there. He was not paid well. It was a poorly paid job. He had a small little room in the quarters there. Didn't have very much by way of material things. He had his poetry and he had his duffli, his tambourine. These were the two, I would say, passions of Shailendra ji's life. He was a poet from a very young age. He even had published poetry in some Agra dailies and magazines under the name of Shachipati. So when he moved to Bombay, he continued with his poetry. He became a member of the Indian People's Theatre Association. This was a very popular organization for a lot of the acting fraternity, both theatre and movies. He used to read his poems at the mushairas there. And one day, he heard Gandhiji speak. He was so moved by his speech, his call to all Indians to join the freedom movement, that he did so wholeheartedly, ended up going to jail as well. So when he came out, he decided that he was going to use his pen to fight for freedom. So he wrote several very rousing poems. And one of these poems, Jalta Hai Punjab, he read it at the IPTA meeting. At that meeting, Prithviraj Kapoor and his son Raj Kapoor were both there. Raj Kapoor was so impressed by this incredible poem and by this rather fiery young man that he went up to him and asked him if he'd be interested in writing for his, would be his directorial debut. This was in 1948, Aag. Shailendra ji was appalled at the thought of selling his poetry. So he rather curtly told Raj Kapoor that he was not going to sell his poetry. And Raj Kapoor was, accepting of the decision, but he told him not to forget that he was there if Shailendra ji needed any kind of help. Meanwhile, Shailendra ji had gotten married to a lovely lady named Shakuntala from Jhansi. And even though he was married, his financial circumstances had not really improved. was still, struggling. When his wife was expecting her first child, he had to send her back to Jhansi for the delivery. It was traditional going to her maternal house. He felt he wanted to give her some money, just, to help her with the costs and to celebrate when the baby was born. So he remembered Raj Kapoor's offer. He went to Raj Kapoor and told him that he would take this amount, 500 rupees, as a loan, and he would repay Raj Kapoor. Raj Kapoor gave him the money. He gave it to his wife. She went on to have their first son, Shailendra. And when Shailendra ji went to Raj Kapoor to return the money, Raj Kapoor said, "I won't take the money. This was just, I wanted to help you out when in bad circumstances, I was helping you through a bad phase." But Shailendra ji had so much integrity, he just could not accept this. So he said, "I'll do anything for you. Would you like me to write something for you?" So Raj Kapoor told him that, "I need a couple more songs for my film Barsat. So if you're willing to write something for that, I'll accept it." So this was how the first ever title song of Bollywood cinema came about. Shailendra ji wrote Barsat Mein Humse Mile and Patli Kamar Hai for this movie. And that's when the whole Shankar Jaikishan, Shailendra, Hasrat Jaipuri, Raj Kapoor group was formed, so to speak. And of course, Mukesh ji as well. So the first song for today that I'd like to share with you is the title song of Barsat. Shankar Jaikishan's music, of course, picturized on Nimmi, who was one of the actors in the movie. Raj Kapoor is also present in the scene, but there's no song picturized on him in the movie, actually. It only comes much later. Barsat mein humse mile tum sajan, tumse mile hum barsat mein, sung by Lata ji and a chorus.
बरसात में हमसे मिले तुम सजन तुमसे मिले हम बरसात में बरसात में हमसे मिले तुम सजन तुमसे मिले हम बरसात में बरसात में हमसे मिले तुम सजन तुमसे मिले हम बरसात में.
Raj Kapoor was born on the 14th of December 1924 in Peshawar, British India. His grandfather's house was there. He was a diwan. And Prithviraj Kapoor, when Raj Kapoor was quite young, decided to move to Bombay because he wanted to pursue a career in acting, both theatre and movies, but theatre was his passion. So they moved to Bombay. Raj Kapoor was not a very academically inclined person. He loved the movies, and that's what he'd been seeing, theatre and the movies, ever since he was born. It was natural that he would gravitate towards that. He told his father, once he completed high school, maybe not even that he wanted to go into the movies, didn't want his father to waste any more money on his education. Prithviraj Kapoor agreed and told him that he needs to start out right at the beginning at the absolute bare bones kind of a job so that he would know what it took to really make it in the film industry. And Raj Kapoor had always expressed an interest not just in acting, but he really wanted to be a complete filmmaker. He wanted to have his own studios, he wanted to be a director, a producer, and so on. So Raj Kapoor got a job with the great Kedar Sharma. He did everything there. Everything he was asked. He was a gopher, he was, you name it, he was doing it. He learned a lot from Kedar Sharma. Sharma was very impressed by this young man and his work ethic and his intelligence in absorbing everything that was movies. He gave him his first break in a movie called Neel Kamal, starring Raj Kapoor with another child artist, Madhubala. The movie was terrible. It was a flop. But these two were recognized as, hot stuff, basically. So by 1948, just a year after this movie was released, Raj Kapoor had already established RK Studios. He was about to direct his first film, Aag, which was when he met Shailendra. And that was the year, 1948, was the year he would also act in his first hit movie, Andaz. It was a super hit, actually. He went on in 1949 to produce, direct, act in Barsat, and his career took off. I mean, he acted in, obviously, RK Studios films, but he also acted in other studios films as well, because he was interested in getting all kinds of experience from and learning from other people. 1956 brought him to AVM Studios and he acted in Chori Chori. This was a remake, sort of Roman Holiday. It was really a good movie and very well made, very well acted. Musical score was fantastic. And Raj Kapoor, by now he had sort of established himself with this Charlie Chaplin-esque kind of a persona, a little bit self-pitying, kind of a jokerish persona. But in this movie, he acts more like the person he really was, a very almost dashing and very charming young man. I personally liked him in this movie out of all of his movies, probably the best. And Jaagte Raho was another one that I really liked him in. Anyway, the first song that I'd like to share is from Chori Chori, Shankar Jaikishan's music. Shailendra Ji, Hasrat Jaipuri shared the honors for lyrics. The song that I'd like to share is a duet picturized on Raj Kapoor and Nargis, who was his lead in this movie. And Shailendra Ji has written the lyrics. It showcases how charming Raj Kapoor could be on screen, and it also gives you a glimpse into Shailendra Ji's very romantic personality, sung very beautifully by Lata Ji and Manada. Ye raat bhigi bhigi, ye mast fizaएं.
ये रात भीगी भीगी ये मस्त फिजाएं उठा धीरे धीरे वो चाँद प्यारा प्यारा ये रात भीगी भीगी ये मस्त फिजाएं उठा धीरे धीरे वो चाँद प्यारा प्यारा
क्यों आग सी लगा के गुमसुम है चांदनी सोने भी नहीं देता मौसम का ये इशारा
इठलाती हवा नीलम का गगन कलियों पे ये बेहोशी की नमी ऐसे में भी क्यों बेचैन है दिल जीवन में न जाने क्या है कमी
क्यों आग सी लगा के गुमसुम है चांदनी सोने भी नहीं
Shailendra ji was a poet of great versatility. He could write in chaste Hindi, pure Urdu, and a lot of his poetry was in Brij Bhasha, which was sort of the language of the masses in UP. He wrote a lot of poetry, both filmy and non-filmy, about social injustice. He was a huge champion of the downtrodden, coming from what was considered a lower caste. He knew what it was like, to be at the receiving end of extreme prejudice, dislike, hate even, just because you have had the bad luck to have been born in the wrong caste. He was also left-leaning politically, naturally, and he was a man who could express very, very harsh truths in the most light-hearted way. His lines would be delivered with an almost a deftness, I want to say, and yet could totally pierce the heart with what he was trying to say. He could condense a whole, probably eras of injustice into just one absolutely perfect line. In Shri 420, the song Dil Ka Haal Sune Dilwala, it's supposed to be a very light-hearted song. But if you listen to the lyrics closely, there's a lot of angst in it. And there's one line in particular where he says, Bhook ne hai bade pyar se pala, which means hunger has nurtured me very well. So just a glimpse of what all he suffered in his life. The song I want to share next is another example of his ability, this phenomenal ability to cut through all the crap, express the sentiment that should be said, but done, so beautifully and lightly. It's from a movie called Ujala. It's not a Raj Kapoor movie, actually. It's a Shami Kapoor movie. The scene is where Shami Kapoor is trying to distract the children in the slum where he lives. They're all hungry. So he's trying to distract them from their hunger by singing this song. Manada has sung this with a chorus. Shankar Jaikishan's music. Very, very beautiful. Suraj zara aa paas aa, aaj sapnon ki roti pakaenge hum.
सूरज जरा आ पास आ, आज सपनों की रोटी पकाएंगे हम। है आसमां तू बड़ा मेहरबान, आज तुझको भी दावत खिलाएंगे हम। सूरज जरा आ पास आ,
आज सपनों की रोटी पकाएंगे हम।
है आसमां तू बड़ा मेहरबान, आज तुझको भी दावत खिलाएंगे हम। सूरज जरा आ पास आ। ठंडा पड़ा और पेट में आग है, गर्मा गर्म रोटियां कितना हंसी ख्वाब है। चूल्हा है ठंडा पड़ा और पेट में आग है, गर्मा गर्म रोटियां कितना हंसी ख्वाब है।
आज सपनों की रोटी पकाएंगे हम।
है आसमां तू बड़ा मेहरबान, आज तुझको भी दावत खिलाएंगे हम। सूरज जरा आ पास आ।
Raj Kapoor very quickly rose to the top and along with Dilip Kumar and Dev Anand became part of this sort of trio of very successful heroes of the 50s. He acted in a variety of movies. He tended towards light musical comedies, but these all had a social message of reform that he wanted to, you know, get through to the masses. He also made some very serious movies like Boot Polish, Jaagte Raho, Jis Desh Mein Ganga Behti Hai. These all had a plea, one could say, for drastic social reform. He also was a phenomenal filmmaker. He had a fantastic sense of timing, scene setting. He had a great nose for sniffing out talent, whether it be in writing or in music, acting, you name it. He had a very good eye for that. He also knew a good story when it came by. You know, there were times when other filmmakers would pass on a story and he would pick up on this story and bring it to life in such a way that it became a big hit. Because his movies had a socialist message, they were extremely popular in Russia, in the Eastern Bloc, in China, Turkey, Middle East, Iran, all of these places. In fact, some of his movies have been remade in Turkey and Iran. His movies have reached basically a huge international audience. He also had a fantastic sense of comedic timing. If you see him in Dil Hi To Hai, you can see what a fantastic job he did. The movie towards the end becomes a little melodramatic and, you know, usual stuff. But for the most part, the movie has him and Nutan. They play off each other very beautifully and they are really funny. This song that I'd like to share is one where he and Nutan have this sort of secret message going on between the two of them, and they're making fun of Pran, who's the villain. Sahir Saab has written the lyrics for this and Roshan's music. तुम अगर मुझको न चाहोगे तो कोई बात नहीं, किसी गैर को चाहोगी तो मुश्किल होगी. मुकेश जी has sung this.
तुम अगर मुझको न चाहो तो कोई बात नहीं, तुम किसी और को चाहोगी तो मुश्किल होगी. तुम किसी और को चाहोगी तो मुश्किल होगी. तुम अगर मुझको न चाहो तो कोई बात नहीं, तुम किसी और को चाहोगी तो मुश्किल होगी. तुम किसी और को चाहोगी तो मुश्किल होगी. अब अगर मेल नहीं है तो जुदाई भी नहीं, बात तोड़ी भी नहीं, तुमने बनाई भी नहीं. ये सहारा ही बहुत है मेरे जीने के लिए, तुम अगर मेरी नहीं हो तो पराई भी नहीं. मेरे दिल को ना सराहो, मेरे दिल को ना सराहो तो कोई बात नहीं, तो कोई बात नहीं. गैर के दिल को सराहोगी तो मुश्किल होगी. तुम किसी और को चाहोगी तो मुश्किल होगी.
Shailendra ji wrote more than 900 songs for movies, apparently. I know I've made it appear as if he is a very serious man and a very serious songwriter. That's actually not so. He was a very loving and fun father to his 5 children, Shaili Shailendra and then Manoj Shailendra, then his daughters and his youngest son Dinesh. He was also very loving and apparently quite a romantic husband as well. And you can see the romantic aspect of Shailendra ji in all his songs, right? Ye Mera Deevanapan Hai from Yehudi, Pyar Hua Ikrar Hua Hai from Shri 420, and all the songs in Madhumati. I mean, honestly, which one single one could you just pick for this? Um, all his songs, he was quite a romantic. Another genre that you wouldn't quite expect him to be even indulging in is the devotional songs. He was very good. He's written some beautiful devotional songs. One in particular is my favorite. It's from the movie Basant Bahar. It was a movie about a singer, his devotion to music, and his journey on how he goes through trying to find the ideal guru and so on. It's a tragedy. Bharat Bhushan and Nimi in the lead. This song, I think, features among Mannada's gems. He has sung this so incredibly well. It showcases his depth, his knowledge of classical music, his range. I mean, this song just spans like 2.5, 3 octaves. Shankar Jaikishan have just totally hit it out of the park with this one. And Shailendra ji's lyrics. Bhay bhanjana vandana sun hamari.
भय भंजना वंदना सुन हमारी भय भंजना वंदना सुन हमारी दरस तेरे मांगे ये तेरा पुजारी भय भंजना के फूलों की माला बनाकर गीतों के फूलों की माला बनाकर लाया हूँ दिल आरती में सजा कर ये सांसों की सरगम करूं तेरे अर्पण
Raj Kapoor married Krishna Malhotra in 1946. They had 5 children. His sons came into movies, Randhir Kapoor, Rishi Kapoor, and Rajiv Kapoor, who was not that successful. His daughters went on to get married, and his youngest daughter's son, Arman Jain, also came into movies, as have his other grandchildren, Kareena and Karishma Kapoor, Randhir Kapoor's daughters, and Ranbir Kapoor, named after his grandfather, Rishi Kapoor's son, is also a big hit in the movies. Raj Kapoor did not have much success after, I would say, the mid-60s as a hero. He acted with a number of very young, new starlets, but this didn't provide any kind of boost to his flagging career as a lead artist. The 70s, he decided, was the time for him to concentrate on movie making, directing, and maybe moving into character roles, which is what he ended up doing with Kal Aaj Aur Kal, where he introduced Randhir Kapoor, and other movies like Dharam Karam and stuff, where he acted as somebody's father. He also went on to help establish careers of people like Padmini Kolhapure. He introduced Dimple Kapadia to the movies, and what a bang that movie was, Bobby, right? He continued to make movies into the 80s. A man who loved to live life large. He had asthma. In fact, when he died in 1988, it was following complications after an asthma attack. So tragically, he left us at the age of 63, but has left behind a phenomenal legacy in all the movies and in the fact that his grandchildren and maybe even their children might be coming into Bollywood and continuing the family tradition. As for Shailendra ji, he had this great desire to make a movie from the short story by Phanishwarnath Renu called Mare Gaye Gulfam. It's a very beautiful story, and he was obsessed with it. A lot of people advised him in the film industry not to make it. Apparently, even Raj Kapoor advised him against it. But somehow it was one of those things where he felt that this was something that he had to do. Raj Kapoor agreed to act for him in the movie as the lead. He made the movie. It took him many years, a lot of trials and tribulations making this movie. There were so many obstacles. People weren't cooperating. A lot of people who he relied on in the movie industry, who he thought were his friends, ended up turning away from him in his time of need. He finally released the movie in 1966 to very, very poor box office takings. He won the national award, though. It was a fantastic movie. It is a fantastic movie, I should say. Both Wahida Rahman and Raj Kapoor have turned in fantastic performances. And the music, fantastic too. Obviously, the lyrics by Shailendra ji. So, I mean, come on. But because this movie was such a flop and it had taken its toll on the health of Shailendra ji at this point, he became very depressed. This led to a whole bunch of health issues. And at the horribly young age of 43, he finally died of a heart attack. And sadly, for, I guess, his closest friend, Raj Kapoor, he died on Raj Kapoor's birthday in December 14th. Shailendra ji, of course, has left behind a phenomenal body of work. Filmy, of course, but his non-filmy poetry, I mean, you should read it. I would highly encourage you to read it. You will find the books with translations readily available on the web, in India, everywhere. Read it because he's got amazing poetry that's very revolutionary and calling for social injustices to be reformed. Anyway, I end this episode with one of my favorites of both of these artists. It's from Sangam, released in 1964. Essentially, it was Raj Kapoor's last hit as a lead actor. Great movie, absolute super hit. Music, of course, Shankar Jaikishan, fantastic. Shailendra ji has written this particular song. It's a sort of a duet. It's mainly Lata ji singing with Mukesh ji coming in the end. O mere sanam, do jism magar ek jaan hai hum.
ओ मेरे सनम दो जिस्म मगर एक जान है हम एक दिल के दो अरमान है हम ओ मेरे सनम दो जिस्म मगर एक जान है हम एक दिल के दो अरमान है हम ओ
I'll be back in a couple of weeks. Remember, music is food for the soul. Keep listening.